Welcome to The Explainer. And just like that, the 2026 midterm season is officially underway. The first shots have been fired, and they were fired in Texas. And believe me, these results are way more than just a local story. They are a front-row seat to the ideological battles that are defining American politics right now.
You know, what happened last night does a lot more than just set the table for the big election in November. It really pulls back the curtain on these deep, intense civil wars that are just raging inside both the Republican and Democratic parties. This isn't just about different candidates. It's a fight for the very soul of what each party is going to be.
All right, let's dive right into the main event, the absolutely brutal, high-stakes fight for the Republican nomination for the U.S. Senate. I mean, this was not just another primary. It was more like a heavyweight title match for the future direction of the GOP.
The stakes here could not have been higher. And you know what proves it? The money. A record-shattering $128 million was poured into this one race. To put that in perspective, that is more than has ever been spent on a primary like this, which just goes to show you how critical this fight was for everyone involved. So after all that spending, all those ads, what happened? A deadlock. Nobody managed to get over that 50% mark you need to win outright. And that forces a super high-stakes, head-to-head runoff between the top two guys, the incumbent, Senator John Cornyn, and the state's Attorney General, Ken Paxton. So yeah, this fight is far from over.
So this runoff, it presents Republican voters with a really stark choice. On one side, you've got John Cornyn. He's been a fixture of the party establishment for decades, and a lot of people in Washington see him as the quote-unquote safest shot to keep the seat red. And on the other side, you've got Ken Paxton, a diehard Trump loyalist and MAGA firebrand who, even though he's been tangled up in scandals, his supporters see him as an absolute fighter for the cause.
And this quote from a voter? I mean, it just says it all, doesn't it? It perfectly captures this passion gap at the heart of the Republican Party. For Paxton's base, politics isn't about playing it safe. It's a war. And his appeal is that he is willing to fight those cultural and political battles, and that just ignites this fire in his supporters. It's a classic contest, the dependable guy versus the dynamic guy. And that passion? That could be the thing that decides this whole race in May. Now, let's switch over to the Democrats, because they were not immune to their own internal drama. They had their own tough choice to make between two rising stars, and each one had a completely different playbook for how to finally, after decades of trying, turn Texas blue. This race was really a fundamental clash of strategies. You had James Talarico, a former teacher, who argued for building this really broad coalition by reaching out to independents and warning about the threat of Christian nationalism. And then you had Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, a civil rights attorney, whose whole focus was on firing up the core Democratic base, and she branded herself as this unapologetic fighter against Trumpism.
Well, in the end, the Democratic primary voters made a pretty clear choice. They went with James Talarico's bigger tent vision, giving him just enough to get over that crucial 50% line and avoid a runoff altogether. So he's now the official Democratic nominee, and he'll be the one to face whoever wins that Republican battle in November.
But you know, it wasn't just about the big Senate races. There was this powerful anti-incumbent mood that just swept across the entire state. In this political climate, it became really clear that nobody, no matter how long they've been around, was completely safe from a challenge. And maybe the biggest shock of the entire night, I mean the one that really made people's jaws drop, was the decisive defeat of two-term Congressman Dan Crenshaw. This super high-profile guy, once seen as a real rising star, got taken out in a stunning primary upset.
Crenshaw's loss? Wow, it sends a powerful message. He was the only incumbent Republican in the Texas delegation who didn't have Donald Trump's endorsement, and his opponents on the right just hammered him, calling him a rhino, a Republican in name only. His challenger, Steve Toth, who got the backing of Senator Ted Cruz, won pretty handily. It's a huge warning about the power of a Trump endorsement, or in this case, the lack of one. And that anti-incumbent fever didn't stop there. Congressman Tony Gonzales, who actually did have Trump's endorsement, also found himself in a ton of trouble. He got caught up in some controversy and couldn't win his primary outright. Now he's facing a really tough runoff against a YouTuber and gun rights activist named Brandon Herrera.
So where does all this primary chaos leave us? Well, the fight for the soul of Texas politics is so far from over. In fact, for a lot of these key races, it's really just getting started.
So, all eyes are now on May 26th. The next couple of months are going to see that GOP Senate war between Cornyn and Paxton just escalate like crazy. We're also going to see if Tony Gonzales can actually survive his challenge from Brandon Herrera. And then on the Democratic side, you've got this generational battle brewing in Houston where the longtime incumbent Al Green is in a runoff against the much younger Christian Menifee. These races are going to finalize the ballot for November.
And this, right here, this gets to the heart of what these primaries really showed us. Both parties are at a major crossroads. The choices that voters make in these upcoming runoffs will decide what kind of candidates they send into the general election. Are they going to choose ideological fighters who thrill the base? Or are they going to pick candidates they think can bring a broader coalition together to actually win in November? The answer to that question won't just shape the future of Texas,